Is the United States the Babylon of Revelation? Most interpretations of biblical prophecies, including the Book of Revelation, they agree that the United States does not play a clearly defined role in the events of the end times. Many point out that there is no explicit reference to this nation within the biblical text. Eschatology, the study of the end times, is surrounded by diverse interpretations. Virtually every aspect of this topic has given rise to different and, in some cases, even opposing positions. However, amidst these interpretations, one perspective has emerged that is gaining traction. The idea that the United States might not only be implicitly mentioned in the Apocalypse, but might also play a key role. Some interpreters find remarkable parallels between the modern United States and the figure of the mysterious Babylon described in the Book of Revelation. In this sense, dear listener, it is important to consider that the Book of Revelation devotes more attention to this entity called Babylon the Great than to any other subject, devoting more than 2 full chapters to its description. According to the biblical account, Babylon the Great appears as a central player in the prophetic scenario of the end times. So to better understand this context, let's read Revelation chapter 17, verse 5. And on her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. Dear listener, when analyzing this passage, we notice that it says, and on his forehead a name was written, a mystery. Perhaps this means that although his name appears on his forehead in such a way that everyone can see it, it remains a mystery, something that needs to be revealed. Perhaps we are being told that there is a much deeper reality than what is perceived at first glance. But the angel now proceeds to reveal it. Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. Regarding this name, let's begin by briefly recalling what Babylon represents throughout the Bible. First, the challenge to God, originally manifested in the Tower of Babel. Secondly, false religions and idolatry. Babylon was a center of pagan worship, where idolatry knew no bounds. Superstition, along with witchcraft, magic, and the worship of the stars, were part of the common practices among the Babylonians. Thirdly, pride, cruelty, opulence, and vice were distinctive features of their identity. Fourth, Babylon was the place where Israel was taken into exile, and also the nation that destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. Fifth, their kings demanded honors and divine worship. But when John wrote Revelation, historical Babylon had already disappeared. Therefore, an inevitable question arises. To which Babylon does the Book of Revelation now refer? Interpretations have varied over time. During the early centuries of the Church, it was identified with the Roman Empire and the city of Rome. During the Protestant Reformation, it was associated with the Catholic Church and the papacy. More recently, some have associated it with communism. Others have suggested that ancient Babylon will be rebuilt, while some propose that Babylon could represent the United States. The key to this interpretation lies in the changes that have occurred within American culture. The United States has shown a growing tolerance toward attitudes related to sex and materialism that are not aligned with biblical teaching. Today, it seems that sin is not only tolerated, but even celebrated. Because of its central role in global politics and economics, the United States is beginning to resemble the powerful system described in the Book of Revelation. Those who identify the United States with the mysterious Babylon find parallels between this country and the details described in chapters 17 and 18 of Revelation. Let us consider each of them. First, the United States is recognized as a nation made up of a wide diversity of cultures and ethnic groups. Furthermore, it is surrounded by two of the world's largest oceans, which some symbolically relate to what is stated in Revelation chapter 17, verses 1 and 15. Then one of the seven angels, who had the seven bowls, came and spoke to me, saying, "Come here, and I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who sits on many waters." He also said to me, "The waters you saw, where the prostitute sits, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages." Secondly, many governments and world leaders have maintained close relations with the United States, and numerous nations have adopted its cultural models. In various aspects, the world has followed his example, which some connect with Revelation chapter 17, verse 2, where we read, "With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have become drunk with the wine of her fornication." Third, many countries are deeply dependent on American influence, both culturally and economically. This dependence can be compared to a kind of state of fascination or submission, which is associated with Revelation chapter 18, verses 9 to 11. "And the kings of the earth who committed fornication with her and lived luxuriously with her will weep and wail over her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing far off for fear of her torment, saying, 'Woe, woe to the great city of Babylon, the mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come.' And the merchants of the earth weep and wail over her, because no one buys their merchandise anymore." Fourth, the United States is a remarkably prosperous nation compared to many others. His lifestyle, characterized by luxury and abundance, has been interpreted by some as an exaltation of that which God disapproves of. This relates to Revelation chapter 18, verse 7. "As much as she glorified herself and lived in luxury, so much torment and mourning give her. For she says in her heart, 'I sit as queen and am no widow, and I will never see mourning.'" Fifth, despite its power and influence, or precisely because of them, many countries harbor resentment toward the United States. It is not difficult to imagine a scenario in which these nations unite against him. Excessive intervention in global affairs could provoke a hostile, worldwide backlash, as Revelation chapter 17, verse 16 points out. "And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the prostitute, and will leave her desolate and naked, and will devour her flesh, and burn her with fire." Sixth, the modern United States has a global reputation marked by excess, sinful practices, and ungodly attitudes of various kinds. In many cases, these behaviors are even considered within the country as signs of advancement or progress. This relates to Revelation chapter 18, verse 2. "And he cried out with a mighty voice, saying, 'Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, and she has become a dwelling place of demons, a haunt of every unclean spirit, and a haunt of every unclean and detestable bird.'" Seventh, the United States represents one of the most important pillars of the world economy and is one of the largest importers of goods. This dominant position is associated with what Revelation chapter 18 verse 3 says, "For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the fury of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the abundance of her delicacies." Eighth, the possibility of an accelerated collapse of the United States seems more plausible today than in previous generations. Its dependence on imports, a considerable national debt, and a growing internal division could become determining factors. A breaking point in any of these aspects could trigger a sudden and devastating change, in line with Revelation chapter 18, verse 8. Therefore her plagues will come in one day, death, mourning, and famine, and she will be burned with fire, for mighty is the Lord God who judges her. Ninth, a sudden fall of the United States would have economic repercussions of global reach. The impact would be immediate and profound, affecting all nations that depend on its system. This relates to Revelation chapter 18, verses 15 to 19. The merchants of these things, who have grown rich at her expense, will stand far away for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Woe, woe to the great city, clothed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold, precious stones, and pearls. For in 1 hour such riches have been brought to nothing. And every pilot, and all who travel in ships, and sailors, and all who labor at sea, stood at a distance, and seeing the smoke of her burning, they cried out, saying, What city was like this great city? And they threw dust on their heads, and cried out, weeping and wailing, saying, Woe, woe to the great city, in which all who had ships at sea grew rich from her wealth. For in 1 hour she has been laid waste. Dear listener, these are some of the reasons why certain biblical studies consider that the Babylon of Revelation could be related to the United States. However, at the same time, there are statements within those same passages that are difficult to reconcile with that nation. For example, the reference to the 7 hills, as mentioned in Revelation chapter 17, verse 9, does not seem to clearly correspond to the United States. The biblical text says, This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. This passage has often been interpreted as a reference to Rome, historically known as the city built on 7 hills. According to this perspective, the religious and political system represented by the beast would be centered in Rome. And without a doubt, this interpretation has considerable appeal. For example, Babylon is called Mountain Destroyer, and the prophet Isaiah declares that it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the head of the mountains. This opens up the possibility that these 7 mountains represent 7 distinct kingdoms, along with their respective rulers. Now, returning to the question of whether the United States is the Babylon of Revelation, we must also consider what verse 6 of chapter 17 states. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus, and when I saw her, I was amazed with great amazement. Likewise, let us observe what Revelation chapter 18, verse 24 says. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all who have been slain on the earth. In light of these texts, it is difficult to directly associate this description with the United States, since to this day, it has not been characterized by a systematic and direct persecution against believers at the level that these passages seem to indicate. The magnitude of this accusation suggests that this great city could represent something much larger, a symbol of the world system as a whole. Some, in light of these passages, tend to identify the Babylon of Revelation with the Catholic Church, because for centuries, the so-called Holy Inquisition persecuted and killed thousands of believers. Therefore, dear listener, identifying the United States as the mysterious Babylon would also imply rethinking other eschatological interpretations that understand Babylon as a literal city, a religious system, or even a world system. So, Is the United States described in Revelation? Maybe yes, maybe no. Interpretations of Babylon's identity remain diverse. It is possible that this great harlot represents a future condition of the United States, or perhaps these passages point to a completely different reality, and there is simply no direct reference to this nation in the scriptures. As with many topics related to the end times, speculation can be valid, as long as it does not create division among believers. And that's all for today. See you in the next video. May God bless you abundantly.